This week's What's Meta video comes from Peyton Toxic Jug, and his question is, best jungler for silver to gold elo and why so? The answer to that question is Shyvana. For a long time now, Shyvana has been considered a joke. Very few players played her at all, and almost no high elo players ever played her. Since the new preseason changes, however, Shyvana has emerged as one of the best junglers in the game. In fact, in patch 7.23, the first patch since the release of preseason, Shyvana was one of only 2 champions that actually received nerfs to her kit. Shyvana hasn't gotten any buffs to her kit in almost 6 months, her build is not drastically different, so why has she gotten so much better in the preseason? It's because of 2 main things. First is the changes to rubber banding. Rubber banding is commonly known as catch-up experience. Last season, if your team's average level was lower than the enemy's level, you would gain bonus EXP for every single kill or assist, and any jungle minions that you have killed. Bonus EXP was removed entirely, and catch-up EXP was moved to big monsters only, like Blue Buff and the Big Wolf. As a result, gank-intensive junglers like Ezreal fell out of the meta. Now you can't just constantly gank, do wraiths, do krugs, and be on the same level as an enemy jungler who's just been farming all game. Now you have to actually clear and farm at similar levels to the opposing jungler, otherwise you'll fall far behind in levels. One great example of how drastic this change is, last season if you were behind in levels, killing raptors would give you 180 bonus experience for the entire camp, for every level that you were behind. Now the entire camp only gives you 50 experience for every level that you're behind. Since Shyvana clears and farms so fast, she can easily and safely do nothing but power farm and get ahead of her opponent. The second reason Shyvana is so strong right now is because of press the attack. Many champions don't have keystones specifically tailored to them. They just take ones that are generally good for their type of champion. But press the attack felt like it was made for Shyvana. Not only does Shyvana use every single mastery in the precision tree well and the 18% attack speed that is given on top in the precision tree, her Q counts as 2 auto attacks. That means Shyvana just needs 1 auto and 1 Q to instantly proc her keystone. Once press the attack is procced, it amplifies all damage by 12%. And since Shyvana's W is constant damage that's always ticking, it makes Shy's damage output in 1v1 and ganks insane. She's basically a bruiser with burst if she has little distance to close. Now, the most common jungle path that most junglers are taking right now is first buff to second buff and then to the closest camp. That is because it's really effective right now to invade the enemy jungler. And if you lose one of your first 2 buffs early, it can set you back quite a bit. If you're in an elo where players don't know what invading is, then you'll be free to just power farm and not worry about something like that. But otherwise, it's almost always safer to just go buff to your first clear. Now, let's talk about pathing. Shyvana is obviously not a great ganker. She doesn't have great CC and she doesn't really have burst in the early game. When ganking on Shyvana, you need to make sure that you have your flash up. Shyvana does not have any type of gap closer or CC in the early game. Flash is your only real gap closer. So the only thing that she does well in is counter ganks in the early game. After the enemy has used up all of their resources trying to chase and kill your allies, that's when Shyvana can actually get into a position to do damage to them. Unless the enemy champions have overextended to the point where they're almost taking turret shots, all Shyvana can do in an early gank is briskly walk towards the enemy champions. The fact is she won't be able to stay on them long enough to be able to put out any meaningful damage. Your main priority on Shyvana should just be farming up for your jungle item and pathing towards dragon. Shyvana has a bonus passive that allows her to kill dragon a lot faster. You can do dragon as early as level 5 if you finished your jungle item, or if you have a little bit of help from your support. Since Shyvana can farm so incredibly fast, if you path efficiently, you can often out-level the enemy jungler, making your 1v1s a lot easier when you're done clearing your own jungle. If you're going to invade on Shyvana, you need to be extremely patient. Since you have no gap closers, you have to position properly and wait for the enemy jungler to come to you rather than go to him. Remember that your ultimate is a one-way ticket. Once you commit with it, you cannot get out. Be sure that you'll be able to secure a kill. Otherwise, you might have gone too deep and you won't be able to get out. When it comes to diving, Shyvana is fairly good. Since she has a hard time gap closing, and most people hug their tower during tower dives, she doesn't really have to worry about closing the gap. She can just walk up and pour her damage on them. When it comes to mid-game skirmishes on Shyvana, you should be mainly looking to slowly whittle down whoever is closest to you. Shyvana has no escapes outside of her ultimate, and that is mainly for gap closing. So instead of always going for the back line, deal with the enemy front line and threats to your carries first, since they will likely be easier to reach. Unless the enemy backline completely overextends, it's generally not a good idea to dive and chase them on Shyvana, since you have no hard gap closers outside of your ultimate, and you want to use your W for damage and not chasing. On Shyvana, max W first, since it helps you with pretty much everything, from clearing, ganking, and 1v1s. Next, max E. I know it can seem tempting to max Q second, since it's responsible for proccing press the attack, but once you actually proc press the attack, Q actually doesn't do much for you. Press the attack lasts for 6 seconds and QCD is 9 seconds. When you max Q, you're only getting a slightly shorter cooldown and a slightly better bonus AD scaling. Shyvana doesn't really buy AD, so it makes more sense to grab E second instead. When it comes to late game and team fights, you cannot jump into 5 people without guaranteed backup from your team. In a late game scenario, you have to follow up with what your team is doing. That is because Shyvana, while fairly tanky, she's not a true tank, and you cannot just jump into multiple people and survive. If you're going to dive backline in a late game scenario, ideally you want the rest of your team keeping the peelers busy, which is the front line. Ideally, Shyvana is basically doing the same thing as she is in the mid game, except now she's looking for more opportunities to jump onto the backline. Your job is simply to keep the backline busy. Even if you don't kill them, so long as you're keeping them away from your own backline, you are doing your job on Shyvana. For your build, start Machete and Refillable Potion. Rush Red Smite, Blood Razor for the better clear and attack speed. Get finished Ninja Tabbies or Merc Treads based on the enemy team comp. Then go straight into Frozen Mallet as soon as possible. Frozen Mallet will give everything that a Shyvana player needs. Tankiness, damage, but most importantly, stickiness. By constantly auto-attacking, you are able to extend the duration of Shyvana's W. And the best way to get more auto-attacks in is by sticking with them as long as you can, so you really need Frozen Mallet. After that, you have 2 options. Either go full tank with items like Randuin's, Spirit Visage, Adaptive Helm, and Guardian Angel. Going into tank Shyvana is a much safer option than going into a damage version. However, if you're extremely ahead in the mid game, you can pick up something like Trinity Force or Blade of the Ruin King for more damage and stickiness. You pretty much always go into the precision tree for press the attack on Shyvana. And for your secondary tree, you almost always go into the insight tree. This is so you can get the very helpful gold efficient masteries. Pick up either Cosmic Insight, Magical Footwear, or Perfect Timing. Usually, it's better to get perfect timing if you believe that you're going to be diving a certain lane earlier on in the game. Since Shyvana players are going to be power farming for their ultimate anyway, they don't need damage in their secondary tree, they need stickiness, and Boots helps out the most with that. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, and check out some of my other content here on my YouTube channel. That's it for the main video. For the rest of the video, I'll be answering questions from my Discord server at discord.gg/DongHuaP. Mussie Ponsta asks, what champion in top lane is best for carrying? The 2 best champs at carrying solo queue right now would probably be Camille and Gangplank. Camille, because she does really well into tanks, she sustains in lane and she can roam afterwards, and she has a really strong late game split push and team fight capability. And Gangplank because he can easily wave clear against tanks, and a really good Gangplank player can basically just 1v5. What is the best keystone for Gangplank in low elo? Take Kleptomancy. As a general rule of thumb, you shouldn't change your build or your masteries based on what elo you're in. You should change them based on what playstyle you're changing to. If you're in a matchup where you think you're going to have a lot of hard time, then maybe you can run Grasp the Undying. but you have to know why you're running the mastery. You change your keystones based on the individual matchups, not based on the ranking that you're in. For the most part, Kleptomancy is insanely good at getting you to the late game and getting you through the laning phase. Any top laner that can easily abuse Kleptomancy like Gangplank can with his Q is in a fairly good spot in the top lane right now. Last question, does DongHuaP ever answer these?